Welcome back, DigiDs, to another episode of Kerbal Space Program 2. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit more unique. We're going to be trying to launch a rocket from the back or belly of an airplane. And I forget the company's name, but there is actually a company in real life that is doing something like that. And there have been different variations of stuff like this before. But yeah, just kind of rockets. They're typically small rockets launched from either the underbelly or like sometimes on the underside of a wing. Is that way you get halfway up into the atmosphere and then you just kind of let go and let it launch. Now, you may have noticed as well that we are sticking along with this kind of style. I'm really kind of liking this style because it really allows me to more freely play the game without having to worry about the commentary. The fact that I can just more freely build and just kind of work on things and that kind of have an interesting, just a more free mind without having to just think about what I want to say, right? So I think we might stick along with this concept unless it ends up being a super short video, like concept idea wise. But I knew that this was going to take a lot of tweaking. And let me tell you, DigiDs, my didgeridoos, I don't want to call you guys my didgeridoos because I'm not, contrary to belief, I know, I'm not actually Australian. DigiDs kind of sounds Australian in a sense, perhaps. But, I thought about a whole bunch of names, and honestly, when I came up with the channel title of Digital Dave, I mean, my real name, I'm not going to tell you my full real name, but it is Dave. But so when I kind of made the channel, I kind of had a little bit of a, what do you call it, a YouTuber crisis of like, oh no, what do I make my catchphrase? I feel like almost every channel has some type of unique characteristic to it. Like sometimes they always like call their viewers some type of like, I don't know, cutesy name or whatever, just like, welcome back, bros from like PewDiePie, and like, I guess Jacksepticeye or like Mark don't really have anyone, but like, Jack had like the whole top of the morning to you there, lassies, and Markiplier's got the hello there, no, when he leaves or ends the video, it's like the bye-bye, and I guess I kind of do that a little bit, but, at this point, I don't know, I guess DigiDs really is the best I could come up with, and honestly, I don't even say that as like, it's a second place choice. Like, no, honestly, I really like I like calling you guys my DigiDs. It just kind of came to me one day. I was just sitting there at work, and I'm like, not really sitting there, but I was driving around at work because, I guess what? That's right. I am forklift certified. Yeah, you have to subscribe now. If you find yourself coming back to watch more of this content, to watch me blabber on and watch Kerbal Space Program 2 content in the background, like, which I am watching at the same time. I'm just really bad at commentating at it because I just blabber on too much. But hey, you have to hit subscribe now. I'm forklift certified. Unless you yourself are also forklift certified, I automatically take hierarchy in this situation. And you know what? I'm sorry, I'm just giving you a trouble, but no, I don't remember. Yeah, so DigiDs, it was just driving around at work, and it just kind of came to me. I'm like, DigiDs, like, oh, that'd be perfect. So I just kind of came up with that. So, but I kind of feel like at this point I'm kind of coining the phrase. It's not even a lie. Like, it's just straight up like, I don't know if it's necessarily coining a phrase, but at the end I like to say now, I still don't know how to do outros. And as long as I am making content on this channel, I swear to God, I could be doing this for the next year, 2 years, 10 years, however long, wherever this takes me on this adventure. I'm just having a lot of fun doing these in general. But, if it ever gets to the point, I swear to God, I'm going to try to keep, maybe I shouldn't try to swear that I'm going to be doing something because who knows, I'm really bad at keeping this, keeping my word on this stuff. So I could change it, who knows, but I kind of like coining the idea of like, and I still don't know how to do outros because I don't think outros are so difficult, right? Because you're just talking to a void, and then sometimes you just kind of have to just like say goodbye. I guess that's why everyone just kind of does the classic. It's just like, all right, well, thanks for being here, and come back for another and goodbye. It just seems so classic, right? But it's not like a good outro. Maybe you even got people like Blarg, like, who kind of has like a weird, like deep fried, like background music. Some other creators do like a background, like scene for like 10, 15 seconds while like the ending cards play. But I don't know, it's all a little bit different. But let's actually take a look at what we're building here in the background instead of just blabbering. Now that we actually have a little bit of a rocket to look at and commentate on, let's see what we have going on here. So I have that central rocket there on the bottom side, which is only about 2 stages. It has this actual regular rocket that is going to get it from when it detaches from the underside of the plane. It'll have that rocket launch, and then it can kind of fly up while it's still somewhat in the atmosphere, and then, you know, get more of its height, and then hopefully get into space, get into above the 70,000 mark, you know, hopefully around like the 100,000 mark. So that way, when it gets to that point, I can activate my last stage, which is just a tiny little, I don't know how to pronounce it, Xeonox or whatever. It's like Xeon or Xeon gas with a tiny little thruster. So hopefully with just being nothing but a capsule, it'll actually be able to boost it far enough so if we get into space, it'll have enough thrust to just push it and get it into orbit. I want this whole idea to be a concept of launching a rocket from a ship, but also kind of like almost like a touristy sense, or even like sciencey. You know, like if a whole bunch of communities came together and they wanted to put a whole bunch of science projects up into space real quick for a couple of orbits, they could, you know, all come together, fund it, and then launch it up into a big like storage bin, you know, situation. Or it could be like a tourist like launch from the bottom side of a rocket, and I try to take a test flight and accidentally put it on the launch pad instead of the runway. But, you know, you might think, oh, why would we ever do that? We already do that. We already fund things that don't go full orbit. We fund things that just go suborbital, so they can just experience microgravity, or, you know, 0G for a little while, for like maybe, let's say, a few minutes, and then they come back down. Or maybe they'll be up there for like an hour in like a big suborbital trajectory, and then, yeah, the first test did not go very well at all. You know, it's, I might end up naming this episode something like Kerbal Space Program: The Tragedy, because I had to go through probably about 20 different iterations of this ship, and you're going to get to see them all here in the background. But yeah, we already send stuff up into just suborbital trajectories for a short limited time, just so that way they can do those experiments. So something like this, honestly, would not be a bad concept if we can make it cheaper. And in real life, honestly, the rockets are probably smaller than this. They actually are. And, but, you know, we're working with what we have here. KSP2 is still very janky. Understandably, this is kind of a bit of a janky design, so I didn't expect it to be easy, but I think the physics of KSP2 are already kind of janky at this point, with it being in early access, that it makes everything just a little bit more difficult. I seem to consistently have this issue with the wheels. I remember a commenter, you know, shout out to, I don't remember your name, but, you know, there aren't that many people who've commented on my channel before, so if you're watching this episode also, mysterious commenters whose name I don't remember at the time, you mentioned that I should probably turn off the auto suspension, like auto traction and stuff like that. And I remember throughout this, you know, kind of this whole recording session, I remember trying that a number of times, and in both situations, even doing it with or without, and a difference of trying different combinations of settings, the wheels are still so bouncy. You know, it's either one, they're bouncing like you're in the middle of a bouncy castle, you know, or like they're overinflated and they're just hopping around, or they act like they're, for some reason, literal just physical objects with no give at all. You know, they just like hit the ground, they don't even bounce in like a squishy sense, just that they just are super hard, that you just, you know, it's hard to get traction because you're just kind of tumbling around. You know, it's hard to describe, but I mean, you'll be able to see all this as I accidentally put myself out to the launch pad again. I'm trying to get back to the actual runway. I don't know, this whole system of trying to build this rocket was a little funky with how the UI works. A beautiful runway to be taken off in right now, though. I mean, look at that site. If only it wasn't accompanied by giant explosions and nothing but the blue sky afterwards. Lots of floating back to the VAB and little adjustments, and okay, what can I change here? What can I do better there? I think, honestly, the biggest issue, I probably needed more thrust, but I consistently had a problem where it liked to just go to the right, and that might be due to the fact that the mass isn't in the center of the plane anymore, right? So the problem is that the mass is technically down below the center of the belly, and maybe because it was all placed freehand, it wasn't exactly centered, so just a micro inch off of the center, and it was probably being dragged that way in its weight distribution. But yeah, but I think it might be more of a contributor of the wheels in this early access being still just janky as heck. The new update for KSP2 should be coming out in about a week or two, actually. They're going to be fixing, you know, a plethora of issues, right? Just, you know, from everything from loading the UI issues to some performance issues and how much it's going to take to bearing load on like your RAM and stuff and your CPU. I think one of them they're going to be reducing by like 50%, so there's going to be like some performance improvements, which is good. I think it's still going to be very far off. I thought maybe launching vertical would help. It did not help at all. But yeah, they should be bringing a number of improvements. Now, some people might be wondering like, oh, why is it taking so long? Usually when these games first release, you expect an update on like day 1 or 2. And I think there was a very, very tiny one. Maybe that was just like an install key type of update or whatever. But I think it's kind of better this way because they're taking more time to assure that the bug fixes that they are implementing are actually going to fix it and not just create more problems. And in a state that it's already in, we don't want more problems, right? So we want to make sure that everything works properly. And honestly, if they want to take their time with it, those of us who love KSP and are hard veteran fans of the game, I don't think a lot of us don't mind too much of all the issues, and we just kind of deal with it. I know a lot of people are still kind of up in arms around it, but almost off the ground that time. But I don't think it really matters too much because you give it a year or two, we're not gonna be talking about it anymore. Everyone's just be talking about, you know, how much more fun it is, right? So I don't know. Give it time. We're interested to see where it's going. But yeah, I mean, the design is still coming along. It is a headache in itself, trying to just tweak all these little improvements. I thought reducing the fuel in these fuel tanks would kind of help because I figured that maybe perhaps we're just too heavy. You know, I can't necessarily make the plane any smaller because if it's going to be smaller, then you got to work with everything else smaller. There's probably a lot more flippy and unstable in general. So at this point, it's still retaining the shape of a jet almost. It looks pretty identical to a jet. It's just, I probably should have added a stabilizer fin now that I think about it. I never did do that, although I don't know if that would have helped much. It could have, perhaps. I seem to talk a lot in hypotheticals of maybe and perhaps. I definitely should have put a tail fin. Now, I came across this issue where it seemed that my lift, for some reason, like rotated and it would only go down. Now, I remember originally it was pointing up. At some point, for some reason, it's saying my lift only goes down. And I guess I didn't get the chance to restart the game because I didn't really want to break up the recording and give another chance. I probably should have given that a chance. But, you know, I did go back to the main menu and reload it to look at something and to look at the VAB after I got done with the recording, and it was still doing that. So it wasn't a full restart, but at least I go back to the main menu and still is doing that. For some reason, yeah, it just put all the lift upside down. I don't think it's necessarily upside down. I think it's just maybe a visual glitch. But yeah, I kind of made some mistakes on trying to detach. It's like, honestly, I'm surprised I even got this whole thing attached this one time, because anytime I accidentally detach it, it's already impossible to try to get the whole thing back together in one piece or in a straight format. You already saw a little bit earlier how it got off, and I tried to put it back on. I was rotating it. It was at weird angles, and it just wasn't working. But yeah, I thought maybe this meant to be a little bit better, and it does prove to be a little bit more efficient, keeping the mass above instead of hanging down below you and dragging you away. Keeping it on top actually raises your mass away from it, although it still is an issue because the mass is not in the center of the plane still. It is somewhere in between the plane and the rocket on top, which is kind of dragging all of the weight upward and away, which is causing that flipping issue, which could be resolved a little bit perhaps by just kind of dragging the wings back, which I tried a little bit. It didn't seem to help out a whole lot. A few more attempts end up going on here, but this whole episode was a bit of a headache. You know, we do kind of achieve what we set out to do. We do end up going suborbital, but, you know, I don't want to give too many, you know, spoilers, but I almost kind of feel like if you click on a video and you know what we're doing for that video, you wouldn't get to the end of the video and that thing just not happen. So at this point, I hope you'd be expecting it. If you didn't, I apologize, and I did not mean to ruin the surprise for you, I suppose. Like, hey, today, guys, we're gonna actually play Kerbal Space Program 2, and then just plays Cluster Truck instead. Which, by the way, I did play Cluster Truck and released an episode of that yesterday. And I guess yesterday is a little bit of a weird time concept compared to when I released these videos, because I'm a few of them ahead now at this point. However, you know, Kerbal Space Program 2 has been doing really well on the channel, and I find it just kind of funny. I just look over here on my third monitor, I'll go ahead and look at the views. I find it just hilarious. When KSP 2 first released, I did an episode on it and got about 200 views, but then I did another episode and I got about 3,500 views, which is fantastic. Oh my god. You know, those are some high numbers, and only got like 15 subscribers. I don't know how that really works out, but you know, thank you those 15 subscribers from when I made I built the perfect, wow, when I built the perfect jet. That was a really good episode. But then right after that, you know, like 300, 400. But the point I'm getting to is that as soon as I did anything else, I did an episode of Kerbal Space Program 1, the first one, KSP 1, still topical, still, you know, it's there, but it's not KSP 2, it's not new. KSP 1, and it got currently sitting from 2 days ago, 24 views. And then I did Hard Space again, which was 27 views, and then Trucking Simulator is 13. Like, I find it funny. I can go just from like hundreds to thousands to like, nah, you'd be lucky if you're breaking above 30. You know, it's just it's a little bit hilarious, and just how the whole system works. It can be very lucky if anything gets picked up. And, you know, taking a look here in the background, maybe people click on this video and they expect better footage, but they just get a flipping jet going out of control. I put a large reaction wheel on there because I got a little sick of the whole thing just continuously flipping, so I thought, let's put a large reaction wheel on it. But you know what? The idea came across to me. If ain't broke, don't fix it. So you remember this blue jet, DGDs? This is the one that I've been flying too much of, as I forget to deploy the landing gear and take off my wing immediately. But what I'm like, okay, so this jet still flies perfectly. I know I was still kind of getting the lift issue, but so I went ahead and extended all the gear, and I wanted to take it for a fly to make sure, like, okay, so I know that this plane that I built works. It is a really good jet. Which, by the way, if you are new to this channel, you have not seen this video yet, you know, go take a look at the other episodes. They're still there recent on the channel, so you should be able to find them pretty easy. We've done a few of them. We did one where we built the jet, went through a few iterations. We went to the Antarctic. We actually built a couple rockets that flew us into suborbit, and we came back into the atmosphere and flew to the Antarctic. I did a little bit too much of a barrel roll there and crashed it, but that's alright, because I wanted to make sure that the jet was actually flying, right? So this thing is a beast. You should see the other videos if you haven't checked them out yet, because it is amazing how well this thing flies. So I thought, okay, so let's just take this design then and build upon this. And if this doesn't work, then I'm really out of ideas, because I know that this plane works. That other plane I just necessarily didn't have a good way to test, because it was the second add-on. It wasn't the primary. What I think the big issue was that I should have built the plane first and then tested the plane. But I feel if I did that, I would have ended up exactly with the same design, right? Because I could have maybe gone a lot bigger. I could have put like 4 engines or something, or done like some weird split where I added the 2 split at the end and then put two splits at the end of those to get me 4. You know, if you're following along with that logic, it'd be a little weird, I bet, on the aerodynamics, but it could probably work. You know, maybe that'll be a future video, or maybe that'll be in the next video where I try to build as big as a plane as possible. Just a huge plane. Just get the wings massive. Just like just fill up the VAB with just nothing but engines. You know, just really see how far I can take these planes, because the sad matter of the fact is that, you know, KSP2, I really love it, but it's too glitchy right now to necessarily build complex rockets to get to these other systems in an efficient way. I know I'm still seeing a lot of these other YouTubers do it. You can do it, but the other problem is that they are also suffering through that. They're not getting through it in a simple, you know, fly there and they're done. No, they've got to suffer just as well through all of those frame issues and the cracking, and we're all having problems right now, right? So we're just kind of I think I'll just kind of wait for a lot of maybe a couple of updates to come along before I start trying to do huge things like building a base on the moon or something like that. But I think I will still want to try to visit the other planets when I get a chance. And taking a look here at DigiDs, you know, never mind the planets, because right now we are on Kerbin and we are taking flight. Again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. This jet worked before and it still works now. We actually start to get some good altitude, keep it steady. I think this was the first time when I tried to fly it. Yes or no, was this the second? I wasn't paying close enough attention. I think this was the first. Correct me down below if you want, you know, like, and this is timestamp at like 19 something, that this is exactly where you're wrong. I'm sorry. But no, this actually starts to work. I love this jet. This jet is perfect. It is so maneuverable. Honestly, the only thing I maybe do better with it is that I need to find a way to make it a little bit bigger so I can add more feel to it, because what the main objective here is that, well, okay, well, Big Digital Dave, Big D, I don't know what you want to call me. Honestly, I call you DigiDs. What am I to you? What am I to you? I'm sorry, off topic. Focus. Rocket plane. I want to make the plane a little bit bigger, because what the main purpose is that eventually there will be science added to this game, right? Just like KSP 1, you know, there was a lot of science to get to unlock a tech tree and etc. So I want to get good at building these plane designs now, so that way when in the future that type of content releases, I really want to be able to just add on these components and make this a research plane. So that way when I need to get that early game science, I can just take this plane around and just go search everything. The mountains, the highlands, the lowlands, the grasslands, the shorelines, the ocean itself. You know, I can go visit the desert and like maybe the salt flats, all the different terrains and biomes, even the Antarctic, you know, all the different biomes of Kerbin to get that really good early game science. And I could even practice building some bases around town with that and do some rovers. But, you know, I tried watching Matt Loney's, God, I'm probably mispronouncing his last name terribly wrong, but another space-related KSP2 YouTuber. But I was watching his stuff, and he has so many issues with Kraken as well, trying to make these big rockets. But, you know, I want to build, like, rovers and attach them to the rockets and put them to planets. But, man, watching him try to do that, it looked like hell. It was terrible. I mean, he made the video fine. It's just, like, I know the trouble that he probably had to go through to get all that to actually work, right? So right now I think I'm kind of focusing on trying to get a lot of the aerial stuff, but again, we might still build some simpler rockets to visit the other planets so we can actually go take a look at what they actually look like. You know, if possible, we might be able to, you know, man, there's so many things I want to do. This is why I'm excited about YouTube, because there's so many ideas that I have at this point that I just want to go and record and do at this point. But, you know, we could get a simpler rocket, maybe with just a lot of delta V, you know, a lot of thrust, and then manage to kind of throw it around a gravity system around Minimus, so that way I can launch it straight into a higher orbit, and then maybe get to Duna, which I think is Mars in relation more or less, and then get a gravity system around that. Go take a look, like kind of go on a roller coaster sightseeing view of what is our solar system now, with the higher graphic, like high altitude details, and maybe go through atmosphere. They all have their own music, which I know the music is already in the game. And so I want to take a look, and I haven't heard any of that really myself yet. I've maybe heard small snippets when people have been talking about it on other episodes, but, you know, I haven't actually been able to hear it myself. I haven't been able to listen to it myself for the full. But, you know, I think I'd like to have that experience with all you DigiDs. So, you know, more of this exciting content coming up in the next, you know, number of episodes. I might do another episode of Cluster Truck. You know it doesn't get a lot of views, but honestly, YouTube isn't all about views. I like having fun with this, you know, as long as I'm having fun, as I blow up my rocket constantly in the background. It is just not going well. I was still having fun trying to get this really to work, though. You know, just the attempt in itself of messing around with this absolute buffoonery that is happening behind me in this footage. It's not behind me, it's in front of me, whatever. But it is an effort. But yeah, I have a lot of ideas. I want to be doing a lot of this, but I'm going to be playing maybe a little bit of Cluster Truck, another episode, maybe a bit more Deep Rock. You know, with only one episode a day to release, I'm almost getting way too ahead in footage, because I've got so many ideas. I'm going to keep on recording, and it's been exciting to keep on doing this. But we actually have a really good attempt here. I managed to keep the plane steady enough. The problem was that every time I rotated, it would kind of rock back and forth and then go too far, get out of control, and spin out of control, then I'd launch and die, you know, as you've been seeing. But I actually managed to get a really good, steady go at it and let go. The rocket didn't even launch immediately, but I managed to press space, you know, activate the next stage and let it go. The plane has parachutes, so behind me, it zero throttled, put on parachutes, and when it falls, it should land perfectly safe, relatively. But now, DigiDs, this is where we run into the problem. Now, it's not necessarily a problem, because I cheat what I set out to do. I wanted to make kind of like a suborbital science thing to throw out there super cheap, more or less, or just kind of like in concept of what a science project's quick satellite, microsatellite launch system could be like, right? You know, something that we already do in real life, but maybe this in itself is way too big. This in itself could hold so many, like, college, university, like, experiments and small, like, CubeSats that could be launched into it. But I made the same mistake that that thruster is pointless. The Xeon gas, that mini thruster, is, to put it simply, it's dog shit. There is no other way to put it. It is a terrible thruster. I had 4 or 5 of them on my recent video where I did a satellite relay around the sun, kind of put out a whole bunch of satellites so that way I can use probes anywhere. But what happened is that I got to the point where I only had a couple of satellites left to launch, and I had like 4 or 5 of those thrusters, and it did nothing, absolutely nothing, for like a full day's worth of bursting for my trajectory. So, but hey, thank you for watching DigiDs. We're coming to a close here. It's been great talking to you and voicing over this episode. I love this new style. But if you've been loving the content, again, feel free to hit that subscribe button and leave a comment down below as we leave a flag here on the planet that I guess we did it, ? And thank you for watching. I will see you one, guys. I don't know. I'm bad at outros. And apparently I'm bad at ending on time too. Goodbye.